congressman for Minnesota's 1st District for 12 years, and now sharing his thoughts with us on the Al Travis Show. It's Congressman Gil Gutknecht.
Lucky to have him. Congressman Gil Gutknecht. Congressman, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well.
Good. I don't know that you and I have ever really talked religion much, but I get the feeling you're a religious man. Can you tell me your thoughts on the Charlie Kirk assassination and what you believe it has done possibly for the nation, the country?
Well, if you listen to some of the speeches, I mean, the remarks that Secretary of State Marco Rubio made at that event was perhaps one of the most powerful speeches I have ever heard. Yeah. And in many respects, you know, what the estimates are, there were over 200,000 people there.
Yeah.
You know, the way I would describe it is perhaps the largest tent revival in the history of the United States. And the amazing thing is that most of the speakers were what you would call political types. Mm-hmm. And yet the main theme was really revolved around, you know, faith and the important role that faith has to play in our democracy. You know, we even put on our money, "In God We Trust." Mm-hmm. The whole American experiment is built around the concept that there's a power greater than any government, and that we are endowed by that creator with certain unalienable rights. I mean, that is sort of the fundamental. And one of those, and it's interesting too, is that while our friends on the left continue to, you know, whine about freedom of speech and the death of democracy, it seems to me that, you know, so many people on the left, they don't want to allow people like Charlie Kirk to speak. They certainly don't want to debate him because they know that their arguments fall short of the arguments that he makes or has made. And so in many respects, as I say, I think that the last week has been a great awakening for millions and millions of Americans about freedom of speech, about the relationship between faith and our whole democratic experiment. And I think it's been a very healthy thing. I mean, it was a tragedy that it has really become, I think, an awakening for the American people.
They call it the turning point, which is kicky with Turning Point USA. But do you believe it is? And I guess what I'm trying to go with, you know, we had the JFK's assassination, back in the 60s. You had Ronald Reagan, you had Trump get shot, you have this go on, and it feels like maybe there's something different about this, and maybe there are some legs to it. Or will we see 6 months down the road, once this little mini tour is done that it just kind of goes back and we just fade right out of it? Do you think there's longevity to whatever we're feeling right now, a week and a half later?
I think the best example of this is my grandson, who is a student at Auburn University down in Auburn, Alabama. And he texted me and he said he couldn't believe how many students were coming forward and talking about, you know, what happened, but more importantly, the effect it has had on their faith, that they were now willing to express publicly their belief in Jesus Christ. And so, yeah, I think it is a turning point in many respects. And I think, you know, what surprised me is I didn't know that much about Charlie Kirk, to be really blunt. But I have learned a lot about him in the last week. And more importantly, I've learned about the enormous impact that he's had on literally millions of younger people. And I think that's a very good thing. I think it's a healthy thing. And ultimately, it is a turning point. You know, I'd like to share sort of a modified quote that Glenn Beck gave the day after Charlie Kirk was shot. I modified it slightly. I like my version better than his, but it's based on an old expression, and it goes something like, "When a tyrant is killed, the tyranny dies with him. Mm-hmm. But when a patriot is killed, 1,000 warriors are born." And I think that's sort of what you're seeing in this enormous turnout, and how many people watched, you know, this long memorial service. And even if they didn't watch the whole thing, when they watched the individual speeches given particularly by his wife, and as I say, if you haven't seen it, go out on YouTube and watch the video of Marco Rubio's speech.
Yeah,
It
it
is,
was.
it is indeed, and I have heard lots of speeches. I mean, and I've given some pretty good ones myself, but it is truly one of the greatest speeches I have ever heard. And so it's worth taking that 7 minutes and
Yeah.
listening to what Marco Rubio had to say.
Now, not that Charlie Kirk wouldn't like you and I following him, but he wasn't after us. He was after that younger generation. My kids knew who he was, followed him. And I presume that's why he got on my, I don't know what they call it, reels or whatever. I believe I had watched most of all of Charlie Kirk's little 8-minute videos. I enjoyed him very much, but I had no idea the power that he had. I mean, it was attractive to me. I enjoyed him speaking his Christianity. He could quote the Bible like nobody's business. But you'd see the videos and there's him one-on-one with somebody and maybe some kids in the background. I had no idea 3,000 people would show up at Utah University to hear him speak. And then even since he passed last night, a full auditorium at the University of Minnesota of kids that followed this guy. He was I don't want to say transformative, we won't know for years to come, but the president gives him credit for bringing the young kids over to the Republican side. Is this the sort of thing to cement them as Republicans now for the rest of their lives, that they were there and following Charlie when the other side decided to silence the guy? Is it that kind of momentum that, Martin Luther King kind of thing?
I believe it is.
Wow.
I believe it is. And if you look at history, these kinds of events, they're almost like, where tectonic plates come together and an earthquake happens. And this has been an earthquake, and it has gotten to the nerve of both the left and the right. I mean, the left is totally now unhinged. And I think they look even worse, if that's possible, at the way they have reacted. And some of the comments that have been made by, some of the people on the left. Jimmy Kimmel will come and go. His audience is disappearing. But I think the audience for Charlie Kirk will continue to grow.
You bring up the way people acted and what you saw. That was my biggest thing the next day, is seeing people celebrate this. I'm still very upset with how AOC or even Ilhan Omar were talking about Charlie Kirk after his death, before he's even buried. But I would like to ask you this. I think you're a First Amendment guy like myself, freedom of speech. We had a professor here at MSU say some of that weird crap on TikTok or whatever, and Representative Finstead came out and asked that he resigns. He's putting pressure on the guy to resign. I don't know where I sit with that. I trust you, sir. Can you help me understand? I get it. I think everybody should have the freedom to say what you want. However, if you work for me, like an MSU professor, maybe you have to have some reins on that. Where are you on freedom of speech? And if a guy wants to be a knucklehead, be a knucklehead. I'm having a hard time deciding when and where we should ask for resignations.
Well, first of all, we have to understand, with every right, there is a responsibility, okay? I believe in freedom of speech, but that does not free you from the consequences of that speech, okay? And if you make incredibly offensive remarks, your employer has the right to do what they see fit to correct that. One of the keystones of tort law is that for every wrong there is a remedy. And I'm with Congressman Finstead.
Okay.
This professor, I don't want him teaching my kids. I mean, if that's the attitude that he has, if that's what he brings to the school every day, I don't want him in the classroom. All right. So he's free to say whatever he wants, but he's not free from the consequences of what he says.
See that okay, I can live with that. Again, especially when we're paying your salary. You don't get to choose. Some of these young men and women, you see their TikToks or whatever it is that they're doing these things on, that stuff will haunt them the rest of their life. They're probably not smart enough to figure it out, but you're looking for a job and half the people won't look at you because you did this stupid video. That's on you as well. They're going to have to learn this stuff, but it's a little different today. I appreciate that sentiment. I think I'm with you on that now, because you're absolutely correct. You have a right to say it. You just also have to pay the consequences. Jimmy Kimmel, a very good example. He had a week off the air, got a little embarrassed. He'll probably have the biggest ratings he's ever going to have this evening when he goes back on, but that'll fall off fast. We got to go to break. We'll be back after this. I've got him. Congressman Gil Gutknecht on the Al Travis Show.
You need a friend at the Capitol who knows how to get things done.
And you're in luck, because that's exactly who we are, your friends at the Capitol, and we deliver results.
At Momentum Advocacy, we bring decades of experience in lobbying, public affairs, and crisis communications.
From local nonprofits to national corporations, we help you move policy, manage your media, and make your voice heard.
We're not just seasoned pros, we're essential partners.
Momentum Advocacy, your friends at the Capitol. Learn more at momentum-advocacy.com.
Braver Angels Minnesota is part of a national movement that brings together conservatives, liberals, independents, and others to restore trust, respect, and goodwill in politics. We seek not to eliminate our differences, but rather deal with them head on, with respect and understanding. We do not try to change people's views, but how they view the other side. There will always be differences. Braver Angels Minnesota believes the best way forward is to change how we deal with those differences. Join the civil conversation at mn.braverangels.org.
You don't need to ask him his opinion more than once. Al Travis on the Al Travis Show.
So happy to have Congressman Gil Gutknecht on the program with us, especially to talk about this next topic, because I know you'll explain it to me so I can get it. I, as a conservative constitutionalist, I want our government to get back to the 12 bills, right? 10 appropriation bills. Let's get back to regular order. And we get the Republicans in, got all three sides of this thing, and here we are once again talking about a government shutdown because the Democrats won't play with us to do a continuing resolution. Am I supposed to hate the Democrats for not wanting to play along? Am I supposed to hate the Republicans that they just won't get the job done? We just want to push it down the road. We're a year into this. Tell me which one I'm wrong on, sir. I just want to get back to regular business. We finally got everything.
Well, no, we don't have everybody. Remember, the rules in the Senate make it difficult to do anything without 60 votes.
Yeah,
all right, number one. Number two, the majority in the House includes 4 or 5 sort of Republicans. So it is difficult to get these things done. But I have to agree that there really is a pox upon both houses. and both parties. I mean, the bottom line is the Speaker of the House has an enormous amount of power. I mean, there's a reason that in many respects, the Speaker of the House is the second most powerful person in the U.S. government.
Yeah.
And there is not, in my opinion, a good excuse for the House not getting the 12 bills done. There's no excuse for that.
Okay.
They have the power, and they can say, well, there are 4 or 5 that they don't want to vote for. Make them vote. Okay.
Yeah.
Bring the bills up, make them vote, bring them up under regular order, bring them up under open rules. So if people want to offer amendments, let them offer amendments. And that's called majority rule.
Yep.
So there's no excuse for the House not getting its work done. The Senate, actually, I can give them a little more leeway because of the Senate rules and the way they work. But, I have to fault the Speaker, but I also have to fault the President. The President should be putting pressure on these guys to get the bills done. The idea that we will end up, here's where we're going to wind up, in my opinion. We're going to wind up the day before Christmas. They're going to pass an omnibus bill, and it's going to be, 3,000 pages long, and most of them will have no idea how much junk is in that trunk. And that's not the way to run a government. And frankly, I think in some respects, like I say, you have to fault the Speaker and you have to fault the President for not getting this done.
Well, at some point, you start, the Democrats are going to lose the Democrat base if they don't go far enough left. If you don't start taking care of the finances as Republicans, where do fiscal conservatives go? This is the sort of stuff that really ticks me off. You say, well, it's a continuation resolution for only 7 more weeks. We had Congressman Emmer on talking about that. Just 7 more weeks. It's just 7 more weeks of everybody getting everything wanted, when we passed that bill, whatever it was, 10 times ago, and they just keep continuing it on. This is good for Democrats to keep the CRs going. They still got their junk in there. It's teeing me off, sir. It's getting to the point that what do you want to happen in 2026? You said now you're going to say I have to get to 60 Senate seats and then we can get stuff done? The Democrats don't work that way.
Well, now, wait a second. You had Tom.
Yes, I did. Monday.
What did you ask him? What did he say?
He was telling me this was a great thing. There's a reason for it. We have, I won't quote me on it because it was 4 days ago. 4 of the appropriations bills are down to where they're going to vote on them. They're ready. The other 8 are still working on it. We need the 7 weeks to get that done. And I probably should have pushed him. I said, why? What's another 7 weeks? If you haven't got it done yet, I mean, they spent the month of August or whatever back home. I'm not telling you how to do your job. But he said, just give us 7 more weeks and we'll be fine. So if I say one more time, okay, I'm not going to be mad. Can I get mad then in the middle of November when they do this? Like you say, we need 1 more to get us to Christmas. When am I okay to be mad that they're not taking care of our money?
I don't have an answer.
I don't get that, but that's just got to. The switch to an easier topic, which I find funny, is Trump was on TV yesterday for about 20 minutes, him and RFK, talking about the fact that they are going to now suggest that women who are pregnant don't take Tylenol. Now, Trump goes on and on. He does. Okay, fine. But my wife said, oh, interesting, because they say it may lead to autism. And the world is backlashing on him, saying, we don't have enough concrete proof and this and this. Okay, so the president said, maybe you want to think about it. Don't take it if you're pregnant. What is heard, and how can the left do that? It's kind of like taking red dye number 7 out of your tricks. Okay, it's probably not going to hurt you that it's out. You know what I'm saying? They hate him even when he suggests something that will possibly help young pregnant women. What am I missing? How can this guy win?
Well, I don't think you're ever going to win with them. I mean,
okay.
The Trump derangement syndrome is incurable. I mean, once you have it, you're not going to get better. You're only going to get worse. I mean, it's like, certain diseases. They don't get better on their own. It's a cancer. So, but I think, people need to just step back a second, because many, many years ago, they told pregnant women you shouldn't smoke and you shouldn't drink alcohol. And so you've seen pregnant women, pushing away their wine glasses at celebrations because they're pregnant and they don't want to drink alcohol. Well, the evidence, I hate to say this, my loving mother, drank beer and smoked cigarettes when she was pregnant with me.
Yeah.
Somehow I turned out okay. But the evidence is that, excesses of certain chemicals in your body when you're pregnant will have an influence on the baby that's growing inside you. So I think it's just prudent to say, if you're pregnant, you might want to stay away from some of these kinds of chemicals in your body, because we don't know, but it may have a negative impact on the development of that child. So I congratulate RFK and the president. Yeah. Maybe not the way he rolled it out. I mean, the problem with Donald Trump, and I love him dearly, and I love his policies, but he steps on his own story so often that it gets lost.
It does. We are out of time. I love having you on, Congressman. I thank you for taking the time to do this with us. Let's do it again in a couple of weeks. Fair?
See you then.
He is Congressman Gil Gutknecht on the Al Travis Show.